Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another Halloween movie spoiler review. Today I'll be covering Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, based off the book of the same name, written by Seth Grahame-Smith. Also, there is a sequel to the book called The Last American Vampire. Following this, chronicling the story is Henry Sturgis, who is the not the main character, but like the co-main character of the movie. I got on my Audible of The Last American Vampire, considering I've seen this movie, because I wasn't aware about the author until after this movie already came out. And since I already seen the movie, I usually don't feel the need or compelled to actually look into the book if I've already seen the movie. But it's a great tale, and it kind of, if you actually look into the book, both books, it kind of reminds me of something like the Assassin's Creed games, where you're following along with the main character and they meet up with a lot of famous and infamous characters of history. Like in the book this movie is based off of course, sometimes when they adapt a book into a movie, they leave out certain things here and there in order to fit it into like a movie format. In the book, Abraham Lincoln meets up with Edgar Allan Poe, and it would fit in the time frame that these two would have existed in the exact same time frame. And you see that a lot in the Assassin's Creed games a lot, and I thought that was pretty dope. This movie is directed by Timur Bambitov, Bakhmanbetov, a Russian director, and because he did Ben-Hur actually. Looks like the only movies that he did that I've actually seen was the movie Wanted. It's the first James McAvoy film I ever seen him in. Then of course Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and then of course I've heard of Ben-Hur, but I haven't seen Ben-Hur before. So those are the only movies I've seen that he directed. And it kind of makes sense, considering that one of my gripes of this film that I have is the excessive use of the slow-mo. And although, like I said, I haven't seen Ben-Hur, so I don't know why it was needed in something of an historical thing like that, because it kind of looks like, Gladiator in a way. But I guess it makes sense in something like Wanted, when the unique style of these assassins is, curving bullets, which kind of needed to slow down in order to see that displayed. But which, I don't know, think about it, I should have reviewed Wanted, because it has been a very, very long time since I've seen that film. But it also makes sense, especially in a movie like this, given the fact that vampires has a ridiculous amount of speed. So you want to be able to track certain movements of them. But I think they kind of overdid it, in my opinion. They kind of overdid with the use of slow-mo. Matter of fact, I write down like Wanted, like, that is like I remember it being like a dope movie. I review that. I got a lot of stuff next year that I wanted to review, and I need to like, you know, pick the appropriate amount. It's too much as it is. Because some things going to probably get shuffled into the following year. Anyway, so I highly recommend you guys check out the books because you get a little bit more in depth with it. But I kind of wish this movie got a sequel based off the sequel to the book. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in that I won't spoil, but I highly recommend. It's on Audible, so in case you don't want to have to actually read a book, which I do encourage you, actually buy a book and read it because books are really good, you know, just to have like a hard copy or something like that. But definitely check out Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter and the Last American Vampire. And okay, this movie stars Benjamin Walker as Abraham Lincoln. You got Dominic Cooper as Henry Sturgis, Anthony Mackie as Will Johnson, who historically has been, don't know, because in the movie he's also best friends with Abraham Lincoln, and also like his assistant. So it's kind of tracks in terms of the historical accuracy a bit, where don't know how they were. I don't think they were childhood friends, but I imagine there's some historical precedent for Lincoln in historically befriending William Johnson, and then have him like his most trusted confidant in terms of like, even though they didn't have Secret Service back then, he was, the bodyguard to Lincoln, his driver. He's kind of like his Jarvis in a way, or Alfred. As he run errands and things like that, and looked after Lincoln when Lincoln got sick one time, like headaches or whatever like that. Then when Johnson eventually got sick and died, Lincoln made sure he, his funeral was paid for, and any debts or anything like that, and his mortgages, all this stuff was, taken care of, so his family will be taken care of because the man, always looked after him. Which kind of wish they had some kind of movie based off William Johnson, like the man who looked after the 16th president. Which, by the way, personally, I have three favorite presidents: Obama, Bill Clinton, and Abraham Lincoln. Now I know that Lincoln, especially after the year ago where like people are just trying to take out every freaking monument of people who is deemed problematic, by today's standards. And sure, there are definitely assholey people that done assholey things, but it was a thing of time. Like, of course, like Genghis Khan, horrific, butcher and maniacal conqueror, but what he did is no different from what most other warriors did of that time. He just did it successfully. And yes, he assaulted a lot of females in his pillaging of certain countries and villages and stuff like that. And a lot of, I'm pretty sure there's plenty of people that has can trace their lineage back to Genghis Khan from what he did. And of course, you got like Confederate soldiers monuments that's been torn down or pulled down because we shouldn't be celebrating these guys. It's not really celebrating awful people or anything like that, but then you went like as far as like trying to cancel Abraham Lincoln because or like, at least a couple of presidents, from the past, because like Thomas Jefferson, because he owned and he had sex with slaves and stuff like that, which yes is horrible, but it's not like he's alive to account for his injustices, or bring it's not like you're gonna bring him by tearing down his monument. It's not gonna bring him to justice in a way. Just you just learn from your past and don't repeat the mistake. And of course, Lincoln isn't perfect either. People would argue that his emancipation, trying to free the slaves, he did it as an ulterior motive. Well, he had ulterior motives, and that's just kind of like happened to intertwine with something he really want to do. Like, the whole thing kind of escapes me right now, because it's been like at least a few years since like this kind of notion has been brought to light, where he wasn't just strictly trying to free the slaves. He had other stuff to do, trying to keep the Union together and quash any type of Confederate rebellions and stuff like that. It's a lot historical thing. I'm not going to cover it all here, but it wasn't solely trying to free the slaves. He had other stuff that he primarily want to focus on. That was just like a happy bonus, because some people argue that if he could have unified the country without having to free the slaves, then he probably would have. But that's just a probability. We will never know. That's just something that happened to work out for everybody's benefit. But that doesn't. But the fact that he still did it, I will just give it to him. Because growing up as a kid, he's always been my favorite president, because he freed the slaves, because he was the one who actually done it. Well, of course, he's number 3. 2 is Lincoln, and number 1 is Obama. But Obama has been my first president that I actually voted for, was old enough to vote for. So anyway, matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, because considering in this movie Abraham Lincoln fights off vampires, it would be cool to have movies based off of other historical figures fighting off monsters or something like that, like Frederick Douglass fighting werewolves, or I don't know, Edgar Allan Poe fighting or it doesn't have Edgar Allan Poe. You probably stick to maybe like just presidents. Well, you could just do anything with like certain historical figures, but it's like, I don't know, Teddy Roosevelt fighting werewolves, or you have I don't know, I don't know, John F. Kennedy, dealing with ghosts. Who knows? It's just it's kind of like a fun thought. Anyway, so we got Mary Elizabeth Winstead as Mary Todd Lincoln, Rufus Sewell as Adam, a 5,000-year-old vampire leader, Martin Kosokis as Jack Bartz, Jimmy Simpson as Joshua Speed, Joseph Mall as Thomas Lincoln, Robin McLeavy as Nancy Lincoln, Aaron Watson as Vadoma, Adam's sister, and John Rothman as Jefferson Davis. And of course, we got Jacqueline Fleming as Harriet Tubman, and Alan Tudyk as Stephen A. Douglas. Anyway, as a young kid, Lincoln sees his childhood friend William, who was born a free slave, but his parents were still you know, slaves. And trying to protect his father, he tried to stop this guy from whipping him, but then he turned it on the boy. Despite his father's protest, Lincoln grabbed an axe because he was just like, has become his like number one weapon of choice, all his life. He grabbed an axe, tried to save his friend. He ended up getting hurt himself. His father stepped in and stopped the guy, but in turn, the guy's boss, Jack Bartz, says like, okay, you guys are fired and you still owe me money for the work and stuff like that, and debts need to be paid. So late at night, Jack Bartz, who turns out to be a vampire, attacks the mom while a hidden Lincoln Abraham looks on, not realizing what he's actually witnessing or thinking is a trick of the eye. But all he do know is Jack Bartz was responsible of murdering his mom. Now, here's another thing I have against the movie. One is being like the overuse of the slow-mo in this film, which it works in some cases, but I think in small doses it would have been, probably best. But the other one is this, because you got dealing with vampires, and most of the time vampires in iterations have, more often than not, familiars, human people that do certain tasks for them during the day where they could not do it themselves. Here, they try to circumvent that. It's very rare. And the only other time I see a vampire using like makeup or sunblock or something like that, so that way they can operate during the day, is in the first Blade movie. And even though that trilogy, they only use it that little bit of time in like a couple of scenes in that first movie and never brought it up ever since. It's a hackney, lazy way. I don't want to say lazy, but it's just like a cheap way in order to allow your vampire characters to operate during the day when they know they shouldn't be. That kind of wish they did not do that. I guess it's with keeping up appearances or something like that, but it's not many vampire films, borrow that little thing so that way they can be able to use it during the day. Because I think it's important to establish that vampires cannot operate during the daytime. Is the biggest weakness they have. So 9 years later, soon after his father passed away, he's like, okay, I want to take my revenge now. He gets a bullet. He goes to the bar, drinks to work up the nerve. And that's when he meets Henry Sturgis, who gives him his line like, only time I see a man drinks like that, he either trying to work up a nerve to talk with a girl or work up a nerve to murder a man. He passes on the back, and Lincoln drops his pistol. He picks it up and runs outside, and he attempted to attack Jack, but realizing he is creature of the night, and during a tussle, he shoots the vampire in the eye. Pretty much like, it's been stuck there ever since. Don't know why he never pulled it out, but he realized this is no ordinary man. He gets butt beaten until Henry shows up and chases the guy away. Lincoln wakes up, and just like in Batman Forever, thinking like, oh, it's a woman being hurt, he bursts in, and it's very like one-on-one. It's like, oh my god, this is just like Batman Forever. And it's like thinking like, oh, not exactly, but leading up is kind of like in that same vein, where you're thinking like, oh, a woman's being hurt, but in Batman Forever, Dr. Chase was just like, punching a puncher bag. Here, a woman just having sex with Henry Sturgis. Realizing Henry knows about these creatures and wants him to train him now to defeat these things, because he was solely ill prepared. So didn't even realize, because the movie doesn't make it seem like it, but he spent the next decade training with Henry in order how to defeat vampires, because you gotta learn how to deal with them during the night, because you don't get the benefit of attacking them during the daytime. And they're very fast, and you gotta learn to maneuver. And he learns about silver, you know, because back in Jesus's time, Judas was paid in silver in order to betray Jesus. So now silver has been like a curse of the wicked. So using an axe as his weapon of choice is coated in silver. And I know it's very stupid, but Lincoln learns to wield the power of the truth, because Honest Abe wield the power of the truth in order to use it as a source of his power. And he, you know, he just wields it and like chops down a tree in one swing. After he just admits to himself that it isn't like, which is kind of like a funny line where it's like, who do you hate? He asks Lincoln, like, who do you hate? I hate Jack Bartz. He swings at the tree and he just leaves a, you know, small cut on the tree. And it's like, Henry's like, well, I guess you don't hate him that much. It's like looks like you don't hate him that much. It was very funny, but he's honest with himself. It's like, I hate that I wasn't strong enough to save my mom, and like it's all my fault that I led to her death. I was the reason that led to her death. It's kind of a very Batman thing where it's like Bruce, more in most iterations blame himself for wanting to go to the movies that would ultimately lead to his parents' death. And Abraham, in this case, blames himself ultimately because he's the one that chose to interfere to save his best friend's life, which resulted his parents stepping in to save him, resulted in Jack wanting to take revenge on them for ruining his finances. So now Henry tells him, sends him on these assignments. You got to work your way up to Jack Bartz, because he's a formidable opponent who's been around for a very long time. You got to work your way up the ladder. So he sends him out on these missions, you know, on his own, take out these other vampires who has been living ordinary lives, but you know, secretly they work for Adam, who is a 5,000-year-old vampire who has, you know, many vampires who were chased out of Europe and taken up residence in America and profited off of the slave trade. Many folk like Adam own plantations and use their some of their slaves as a food source, which is a horrific thing. So on his way to Illinois, because he was born in Indiana, on his way to Illinois, he befriends this shopkeep, Joshua Speed, and just for like, you know, just to have like a day job so he can, you know, have some coin in his pocket, but also a place to stay. He ends up beating up with Mary Todd, who at the time was with the politician Stephen A. Douglas. And so Speed gets him invited to this ball where he wears his iconic, you know, top hat thing. And he's already like a tall, lanky guy. So this kind of makes him even taller. Oh, by the way, when he was training with Henry, the art and cinematography is very good in this, because they utilize the blood for these vampires to be like a black inkish type of color, and it's kind of reminiscent to like ink from like an old pen. And there's a moment where there are scenes like when getting ahead of myself here, but it's only an example I can think of where there's like a transition during when Abraham was saving his friend William from Adam. They get temporarily captured, and there's this transition of like, you know, Adam retelling his plans are for America, and there's a transition where it's almost like an art rendering painting commonly used at the time when like very inkish type of, you know, I don't know the exact title of the style, but just like ink splashes. And it's very, very you know, cool looking. I think that was a very cool style choice. And the fact that it transitions from looking upon the map and you're zeroing in on the exact field. It's like a cool transition with that. I think that was a very good choice. Anyway, he goes to the ball, and him and Mary Todd are warming up. Of course, they're going to end up being together. And Lincoln ends up running into his old friend William Johnson, and he comes to Lincoln because he's studying being a lawyer, and knowing that he's close friends with one, he knows he'll get like a proper legal counsel because of some pickle he's getting himself into. And of course, it's race related, and of course, the injustices of that time. Of course, you know, Johnson needed like a good, honest representation. So he goes to his friend, and of course, they end up getting jumped by these other guys who's trying to go after Johnson. Of course, Lincoln tries to, you know, make sure he's like, I'm pretty sure we can solve this here. But of course, they want violence, and because of the training he had with Henry, he's able to like easily, you know, take on these guys. But it ends up landing them in a prison cell. Of course, Mary shows up to help them out, and this brings to mind to Lincoln about like certain injustices going on in America that isn't resolved, and he sees something wrong and he wants to do something about it, so he decides to take up politics, and he essentially decides to run for the presidency. Of course, Henry shows up and points out like, okay, we're supposed to you know, be inconspicuous. Okay, yeah, I sent you here to take out like, you know, vampires, not to run for, you know, politics. And of course, he promised Henry a long time ago that when he gets in this life, he has to forego any semblance of friends or family, because they will be used against them if given a chance by these creatures of the night. But Abraham points out, like, look, I did everything you asked, and I have yet to get the vampire I want to take down who took my mother. So Henry gives him like the information he needs in order to go take on Jack Bartz, which leads into an epic kind of fight where, like, you ever seen, I'm pretty sure we all seen like the animated film The Lion King with those running of those kind of buffalo. I'm pretty sure it was buffalo, where Mufasa's trying to save Simba in this stampede, And you see these stampede of horses while Lincoln is trying to fight Jack Barks among the stampede of horses, which is very cool looking. And they hopping over horses and everything like that. And he takes on, he manages to subdue, well, seemingly, Jack seemingly subdues Lincoln, not realizing Lincoln at some point modify his axe to be like a one-shot, pistol, and shoots Jack in the other eye. And before he chops off his head, he tells Lincoln about how, like, the ultimate plan is to completely overthrow America to establish a country for vampire kind, where they'll enslave all humanity, black, white, Native American, doesn't even matter to them. Because it's kind of akin to what's going on with Castlevania Nocturne, where for a while vampires had to rely on certain monarchies in order to, they're essentially working with their food in order to establish some kind of place, but they want their independence and get back to their top of the food chain where they always used to be. So here they're pretty much establishing the new world as their, well, it's not even a new world anymore, but they're establishing America as their new country, where they establish like a their own place, because they tired of being relegated to the shadows. So that's where Lincoln taking upon himself, okay, I got to run for presidency, I got to be the president, which he ends up doing, because he cannot allow America to run red with blood. Because using the same line as Mary Todd once said, if one person's it's like, what was the line? It's like, if one person's a slave, then none of us are free, or something like that. It's like, we gotta, stop this, slave trade, especially after, seeing the atrocities, because when Johnson gets kidnapped by Adam in retaliation to what happened to Jack Barks, Speed and Lincoln, Lincoln comes clean. This is kind of like a funny little thing with him and Mary, where he comes clean about his life as a vampire hunter, but of course she doesn't believe him, thinking he was just joking or something like that. But he tells Speed so he can be prepared what's going on, so they go after and save Johnson. And they see these creatures feeding off of their slaves, and also kind of fight scene where Lincoln utilizes his axe to take out a bunch of vampires, but it's stopped by Adam and his sister, and trying to coerce Lincoln into working for him in lieu of turning him and forcing him to feed off of his best friend. But Speed comes crashing in with a few horses, saving both Lincoln and Johnson, and escape. They meet up with Harriet Tubman, seeing all the because he's helping free some escaped slaves, and seeing like the conditions that they're in, he takes himself, really pushes him into, okay, we got to do something. And I love the actor in this, because when many people who try to portray historical figures like Jamie Foxx with Ray Charles, or I don't know, Chadwick Boseman, and like, I don't know, pick a character, because he played a lot of historical figures aside from Black Panther. they did extensive research and do whatever they can to embody the individual what they're portraying as. And I'm pretty sure you see, like, I don't know, I'm pretty sure there's some kind of old footage, you know, very like those old reels of Abraham Lincoln, or just, you know, definitely audio of old speeches of his. And just, you know, he just does this a lot to make a point. And it's almost similar to how like Barack Obama, in a way, trying to enunciate to get the point across. So eventually, after marrying Mary Todd, and, you know, eventually gaining the presidency, he's trying to tell Abraham, like, the slave trade is the only thing that's keeping them in bay, because, you know, threatening that they will just go ahead and run rampant all over the place, which will nobody will win. And of course, this sticks into Johnson's craw, because, like, so my people got to bear the brunt of it to save everybody else. And how effed up is that? Which is really effed up. And of course, at the time, like, you know, I'm getting ahead of myself. Abraham eventually learns that Henry Sturgis is also a vampire, because, you know, way back, I'm not sure, it was during like because he meets up with Adam, and he dressed like a musketeer, not with the armor, but with this hat and everything like that. It was a very long time ago. And he turned Henry, killed his wife at the time. And so, because of the rules of this universe, vampires can't attack each other or cause each other harm. Well, at least they can attack each other, but they cannot kill each other. It's like, you know, compelled not to kill each other. So that's why Henry had to rely on vampire hunters in order to do the deed, you know, for him. Which goes to show, which Abraham will later learn, that not all vampires are inherently evil. You can choose not to be a monster. And that happened quite a few times in the books. So, which leads to the Civil War eventually. And so he put down his axe, took up politics and fight, you know, and you know, from in the White House. So things escalate, and eventually Adam decides to put some vampires on the Confederate lines, and since the Union soldiers are ill prepared and don't even know about vampires, they get slaughtered. And during historical events on battlefields during the Civil War, times of great, you know, like massacres on the battlefield, they, in the movie, they attribute to some of those casualties as, you know, vampire attacks, because certain, you know, horrific, you think cannonball fire or musket fire, you know, there's like things that's horrifically done to the human body because of those weapons. And of course, it does happen in the film, but in the movie, none of them will be able to tell between what is an actual weapon or what was like a vampire attack. Couldn't be figured out. And of course, all while this is going on, Adam's sister, Fodoma, sneaks in the White House as one of the housemaids and bites and drains the blood of William Lincoln, which leaves him bedridden and eventually passing away, which distraughts Mary and Abraham. And of course, Mary wants Henry to turn her son, because she just wants her boy back. But Abraham tells her, like, no, that can't happen, because if that happens, he won't be our little boy anymore. He'll be something else. And that's true. I did my review of Interview with a Vampire, and you see Kirsten Dunst's character, this little girl who was turned into a vampire as a young teen, or at least easily could be like 12 or 13 years old at the time, can't grow up because she'll forever be stuck in the same age as she was turned. The body essentially is dead and the cells cannot renew and grow and allow growth spurts and puberty and anything like that to ever happen again, because the body doesn't have the living cells to do it anymore. So now they're pretty much at his wit's end until he realized that he can have everybody bring in all their silver and load it up into carriages and wagons and send it to the smelting factory and turn those into weapons for the Union soldiers. So that way they have something, because without their knowledge, they have the tools necessary to fight back against the undead, because they wouldn't suspect any of that. And now back into an even playing field. Then you see Joshua Speed talking with Verdona, seemingly betraying them, let them know about this train carrying all this silver on his way to the Union soldiers on the battlefield. So Adam and Verdona go to the train track to intercept it. Now, there's a moment where Abraham was talking with his wife Mary Todd, and because things are escalating so badly at the time, they before he comes up with the idea about the silver, he was worried that he had to move him and his wife to upstate New York because he's fearful of the war crawling its way up to DC. That's how dire it was, I imagine, during the actual Civil War, when things seemingly were so bad. Because presidents always have like their own fair share of troublesome moments in their tenure as president. I hardly doubt there's any presidency that didn't have some type of issue. It all depends on the level of the issue. This might be small issues to the point of grandiose issues, but there's no perfect presidency, none that I can remember. There's always a smooth sailing. I think the closest one in my memory has been like pretty smooth sailing. It was the Clinton's administration, and of course he had the whole sex scandal, and there was a thing he established with like don't ask, don't tell kind of situation. But in all intents and purposes, I think that's part of the smoothest time during a presidency that we had. The smoothest one. But there's no perfect presidency where there's like no issue at all. Everybody's happy-go-lucky and and went about their day with like zero problems. Clinton's probably was the closest one in my mind. So turns out Speed tricked, because Henry shows up trying to warn Abraham that Speed, he's betrayed you guys, but it was all a ruse. Whereas Joshua Speed feigned betrayal in order to lure the major players to this location, while Mary Todd, along with Harry Tubman, used the Underground Railroad in order to smuggle all the silver onto the battlefield. So Adam really got played. He attacks and kills Joshua Speed in retaliation. Of course, it's not how he actually died, but Lincoln and essentially Captain America. I can't help but think like Anthony Mackie is now freaking Captain America fighting side by side with Abraham Lincoln. How wild is that? To think about that now. And they both like utilize kind of like the way Cap and Bucky pass back and forth the shield to take on Iron Man in Civil War. You got Anthony Mackie and William Johnson and Abraham Lincoln passing back and forth this silver axe to take down these vampires. And of course, Verdona sabotages the railroad tracks, cause it to explode with dynamite, and attempting to run the train off the tracks. They managed to, get onto the other side of the tracks as the train's falling down, but you see Adam kicking loose the support beams, and as the way the line is delivered, I think is kind of awesome. Mr. President, it's just like, I don't know why. It's like, oh my god, things getting real. It's like, the president's about to take on this freaking vampire. Where's the silver? And he wraps this silver pocket watch that you see all throughout the film, engraved for him, and uses it, as like a silver brass, like brass knuckle but silver, and punches through the his fist through the chest of Adam, and it's like, right here, and takes him out, and Henry Sturgis steps in and holds the tracks together by sheer strength, just to give William Johnson and Abraham Lincoln a chance to get across safely. And of course, these two, their relationship has been on the rocks ever since Abraham found out that he was secretly a vampire and kept it from him. But this is kind of like, renewed their friendship, where he just tells Henry, is like, thank you, Henry. I guess not all vampires are bad, and Henry points out, just like with people, there's good and bad people, and in vampires, there's good and bad. It's good and bad. It's good and bad vampires. So then you see Mary Todd get her awesome moment when Verdona, sneaks onto the Union campsite, try to attack her, and utilize this little silver piece as attached to one of her son's toys, shoves it into the barrel, fires it, and it, headshots Verdona, killing her with that. It was like a memento of that was for my son, bitch. So of course the silver is used, takes down all the vampires and all other Confederate soldiers. Union win the Civil War, and of course Lincoln gives his iconic speech. Sorry, I got my window open because it's kind of warm in here. He gives his iconic speech, and now you're at the moment where he's looking for his hat because him and his wife about to go to that infamous play, and Henry points out maybe let me turn you into a vampire. We can do wonderful things. We can make this country better and keep it from other atrocities that might harm it. And of course Abraham completely says no. It's like, no, there's better ways to be immortal, which symbolized by legacy and what you leave behind, that will be your immortality in a way. And so it transitions to modern day, and as Henry watches on TV the new president, I guess, showing up on the White House lawn, and he sees another man drinking himself silly, and he says like, only reason for a man to drink this much is either he's working up the nerve to ask a girl out or talk to the girl, or he's about to murder somebody. And he passes on the back and he drops a modern peso, and that's where the movie ends. And for the longest time, I thought that it would have been cool. Well, that would have been like, I don't know, Barack Obama or something like that. Because the way when I first saw this movie, I was very young, and it's just with a haircut, and it's like you don't know who the person is. It turns out it looks like a white guy, but I don't know. It would have been awesome if that would have been like Barack Obama, and it's like, oh, Barack Obama, vampire hunter, that kind of thing. That would have been dope. And then he ends up, becoming the next president, while fending off vampires at the same time. That'd have been dope. But yeah, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, it's a very good film. Highly recommend. It's a shame that they didn't give like a sequel based off the second book. I think you can actually make that work. Henry Sturgis, showing off what he did in history, meeting up with these famous historical figures while fending off vampires all the while. Very dope story. The actors are incredible. Everybody did their parts so perfectly. Now, of course, an historian might look at this and might have a few key points about like certain inaccuracies in terms of what happened in terms of around this time. But oh no, this is a very entertaining film. But leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, and I'll see you guys in a few minutes while I wrap up tonight. We'll wrap up tonight the last movie that I will be reviewing for the month of October, for Halloween month. So look forward to that. And then the last review period for the Halloween month will be a Morbius comic. It's 5 issues, so it won't be that long, but that'll be the wrap up of the month. And I'll see you all then. Take care. Share this with your friends. Like, subscribe. Follow me in the links in the description below. YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, Patreon. And yeah, see you in a minute.